So, fan-made episodes of TV shows. Let's talk about those for a second, huh? Anyone who knows my channel will know I'm a very big fan of the Railway series and Thomas the Tank Engine. However, they may not know, also a big My Little Pony fan as well. I was surprised to learn recently that My Little Pony fandom actually beat the Thomas fandom by making their own fan-made episode ahead of time, or, well, before Project Tigermoth came out. I'd never seen this one. It's called Double Rainboom. And let's just get right into it. This is gonna be a lot of opinions on both Double Rainboom as well as Project Tigermoth, and why I think one works better than the other, as well as what I think is a good formula for making fan-made episodes on the whole. Everything I'm about to say is purely my own opinions. That goes for both Double Rainboom and for Project Tigermoth, so, just be prepared for all that. Got an entire sheet of thoughts here for Double Rainboom and why I think it does not work whatsoever. Okay, so there are very good qualities and positives in this, I will say. The music, for instance, it is very relatively close to the original. The animation style is also pretty close as well. And the animators clearly had a passion for this while making it. It's visible in the works. That's a whole nother discussion I can go over at some point. The passion really reflects, more or less. However, there are negatives to Double Rainboom. One hell of a lot of them. The camera angles that are used are a bit too dynamic. Okay, so the camera angles, they were a bit dynamic, which, while that may seem good, it's trying to Double Rainboom was mostly an attempt to emulate the show, which at that time the camera angles were not as dynamic as that. Like, we wouldn't get camera angles angling up at the ceiling in that era of the show, really. And then, of course, the voice acting, mediocre at best. It's close, but just not close enough, unfortunately. Color scheme for the characters falls in that same vein. And then, good God, the internet meme appearances. Troll face in the smoke, face in the moon, some other ones, they just detract from the main story. Which, that's not the only thing. There's also the fan service that detracts from the story. It's like, they're trying to make a fan episode, and then they just, there's so much fan service in there that there is a separate version of the half-hour-long episode that has been cut down to an actual show-length episode of 22 minutes. And barely any story was lost in there. But not entirely because of the fan service. While I admit I like some of the fan service jokes, it's just a bit too many of them. But that's not all that does the issues with the time. Other time issues is the damn pacing. Because, for bleep sakes, the sheer amount of just scenes extending way too long, like Rainbow Dash, flying around for 5 minutes or something, I think was one of them. The whole the camera panning across the wreckage of Ponyville for a minute or two, and all that. There's just too many scenes that are just way too long, way longer than they should be. Then, the crossover is really, really what killed it for me. I don't have any knowledge to speak on the Powerpuff Girls part, because, I never watched any variation of it at any point. But, the fact that it's a crossover in the first place kind of killed it. Then, show don't tell is an important thing that this just didn't use when it really could have. At the very end, Pinkie Pie breaks the fourth wall, as per usual, and literally rips a hole in between dimensions to save Rainbow at the last second. However, Twilight mentioned she had to use a potion to make Pinkie powerful enough to do that. We never see any of that happening, despite it being a visual medium. It's all explained to us after the fact. It's like the ending of A Close Shave for Duck. We're just told things after they happen, and it's just brushed off. Like, show, don't tell. If you're writing a movie or script, or like just generally a small writer trying to build up, show, don't tell is an important thing to use. Which Project Tigermoth did, but I'll get into that later. The episode is titled Double Rainboom, and the actual Double Rainboom itself is not built up to. Rainbow Dash just does it for the sake of doing it, which, while I admit, does fit her character, she just doesn't, like, it does completely fit her character from that era, 100%. But, like, you would think we'd, like, get some build-up or some kind of mention that those are possible, or, like, Rainbow thinking, is that possible? Can I do that? Nope, she just does it. Just flies, and just, it happens. No foreshadowing, no nothing. Which, for small story writers and, like, people trying to build up in story writing, foreshadowing is another good thing to use. Yeah, I really don't like it, and the crossover also, back to that for a second, when I watch fan episodes that when I watch things trying to categorize them, fan episodes I expect to be accurate to source material, not something that pushes two source materials together into one. I consider those as fanfics adapted into film, more or less. It's like, unless it was in the nature of the source material to do crossovers, and the thing it's crossing over with is in the nature of the original source materials, then I'd be okay with it. But in this case, it's not in either of the show's natures, as far as my knowledge goes. Yeah. And ready to do the Project Tigermoth review section with my notes. Project Tigermoth, the good old days. Positives, the fucking music, I swear. Took me right back to when I was young, playing with wooden trains, watching the Hit Era or the Classic Era DVDs I had. And the narrators for this project, by the way, Tom Marshall and Robert Maggie, or however his last name is pronounced, they actually matched the two narration styles that I seem to have noticed amongst the US and UK. That is a rant for a different video, or a different discussion, I guess. But the US and UK Thomas narrators have their own different styles, and the two guys they hired, or the one guy they had on hand, and Tom Marshall, did the job very well on capturing the respective narration styles. Next up, prop accuracy. The props for Toby, Thomas, and Percy look close enough that I genuinely could have mistaken some of them for being real, which was made more likely by the fact they did use some real props in there, like the Mr. Tom and Hat's car and the Mr. Tom and Hat figure, for instance, were real show props, which extra points for that. They also had the whole David Mitten style perfectly nailed down. Like, that's something I want to be able to do someday as a film director, being able to nail his style perfectly. Like, the transition shot from the station being fully restored, for instance, near the end of the story, that's very David Mitten-esque, and one kind of thing I want to master at some point. Similarly, the moving shots with the engines, like with the camera in front of them, then engines move with camera in front, those kind of shots, they nailed those accurately as well. As well as a key aspect for proper fan episodes, in my opinion, is the stories need to be able to tie in to events from the real source material correctly, which The Good Old Days does this very well, with direct callbacks to Toby's old line from season 1, even using real show footage for it. And of course, the Oliver's Fine tie-in of Toby's old line being under restoration now, and being attached to Thomas's branch line in the main line, which ties into the hit era, having the last station on Toby's line being a through station that connects to Thomas's line. Whew, that was a mouthful. Usage of show don't tell. Back to this. Except this time it's a positive, because they actually use it rather than just explaining everything before or after it happens. Rather than explaining how the Y switch works, they just let it do its thing. They just show don't tell. Which, perfection. Yeah. However, there are a few negatives, but honestly, they're small enough negatives that, like, most people wouldn't really notice them. And, they're mostly nitpicks. For instance, some things I noticed is that the prop models are too shiny, is the best way to put it. I don't know how to explain it, but, like, they're, like, I don't know how to put it into words, but, like, when I look at a picture of the Project Tigermoth models, even if they're not in the presence of an original show prop, I'm just like, that's shiny, but a bit too shiny. Like, I know the original show props were shiny and reflective, but, like, the Project Tigermoth one's just a bit too much. And that's extra noticeable on the side rods, as well as Gordon's model for some reason. That's why I didn't mention him in the positives, because, like, my dad never really watched Thomas with me, but, like, I showed him Project Tigermoth, and he just, like, something was off about Gordon's model, even to him, and he never really paid attention to the show when it was on, so that's saying something. And then the faces aren't perfect either. Like, I showed a friend like, 4 seconds into the opening shot of Thomas passing the windmill, and he's like, yeah, this is a fan thing, isn't it? I hadn't told him that it was a fan thing at that point. He was just able to know because the face looked too incorrect. And to be clear, he's not a Thomas fan either. Those are really the only nitpicks I have, and the only negatives at all, really, because I can't really think of any more than that. Actually, one extra negative on the face thing, the Toby clenched eye face, like, using a face more based on a Trains model for that, points off. It would have been better if they just angled the camera away from Toby for those. Extra positive, now I'm thinking of this after I print out the notes, but, like, when Toby smashes through that danger warning after running through the Y switch, in the bushes, there is the scrapped Marklin engine, or part of it, so props to them. Pun intended, I guess, at this point. So yeah, that's first video for 2023. This should be the first video for 2023. And those are my thoughts on Double Rainboom, Project Tigermoth, The Good Old Days, as well as my general opinions on what I consider fan episodes and how to write good ones. Those opinions are sprinkled throughout. The rest of it's just my thoughts on the two things.